In this video, I'm doing a deep dive into the best of the best plugins. This is me whittling down the list of what I consider to be the bread and butter plugins of my plugin box, because it wasn't easy picking these. It really wasn't, because there's just so many good ones, but I was able to do it. Honestly, the list could possibly be shorter, but I think this does it. And I want to give a word of warning. This doesn't mean that I'm telling you guys you must have these plugins, you must buy these, otherwise you're not going to be a good audio engineer. No, you can use stock plugins all you want, that's fine. But I do say check out the freebie plugins if your budget doesn't allow for it, which I understand, especially in this day and age of economic turmoil. But anyway, before I get into that, all that stuff, I just wanted to let you guys know that yes, this is just a here's what's out there kind of video. Take it for what it is. You don't have to use any of these. You don't have to try any of these, but it's out there because over the years, this is the software I've accumulated and what I think, based on my experience, what is the best of the best, the bread and butter. So please hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment before you forget, just to drop, even if it's just to say, hi Adam, what's up? And enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. I'm making a much smaller video about my, what I'm calling the bread and butter plugin chain. But I, once again, want to be transparent about the reality of my large plugin folder. I don't just use, a half dozen plugins. There's a lot more to it than that. Not that I use every single one of these each and every single time, but I like to have options, kind of like, a painter has a large palette of paint to choose from, or even more basic, a little kid has 64 Crayola crowns to choose from in the box instead of just the standard 8 or 12. So, here is me whittling down the list to just the bare essentials. And I guess we'll start with part 3. And so first of all, we have a relatively newer plugin. This comes from the Acoustical Audio Wine Suite, and it's called Fire the Blend. So basically, this is just the saturation portion of that plugin, which uses less latency, less CPU, less RAM. It's designed for either mixing or a lot of tracks for what I call the recording phase of mixing, or the mix prep phase. And so Fire the Blend, it's a newer plugin. I'm not going to include it on the list just because it hasn't been in my plugin folder long enough to justify such, being on such a list. But this is one to look out for. If the more I use it, I'll probably eventually include it in the ultimate list. But for right now, it's not going to be included. See, this is weird because I kind of want to include plugins like this because they're free. And if they're free, I don't feel as guilty recommending them as I do a paid plugin. I think that makes sense, right? Number one, so what this is an emulation of is the Warm Audio. I'm not sure if they call it the EQP1A, but it's the Warm Audio Pultec hardware clone. The nice thing about that is it actually adds some extra frequencies. So normally on a regular EQP1A, it only goes up to 200 hertz. This one, they added 400 and 800 hertz. They also add something on the high frequencies. There's something else that's different too. Anyway, if I figure it out, I'll put it on screen right now. But anyway, Kive Audio released this as a freebie. They have version 1 and 2 available for download. And is it just like a Pultec? No. And by the way, excuse my air conditioner. It's hot today, and I'm not going to sit here sweating. So anyway, I'll keep this on the list for now. Pultec equalizers are always good to have on hand during what I call the recording phase. This is a newer plugin based on the Focusrite Blue Series Mastering EQ, the 315, and it's too new, just like with Wine, just like with Fire the Blend, to add to this list. But I figured I would at least show it off right here because I'm liking it. It has the ability to bring details out of a track that you wouldn't think otherwise are in there. So you know, it's just a good overall equalizer. It's similar to the Focusrite SC, and it's not the exact same thing. Obviously, there's a dynamic section, and we have the TNT stuff going on. I'm sorry, TMT. But, you know, Focusrite was made, or at least these designs were made by Rupert Neve. Still good stuff to this day. The main thing I like is that there is a bandwidth control. If you don't have the bandwidth control, you know, you can't narrow or make it wider. And that actually is a bigger deal than a lot of people realize. If you're new to mixing, well, welcome to bandwidth/Q controls. But yeah, overall, very good designed EQ. And I'm looking forward to demoing it for you guys. So I'll delete both of those. This one's the last one left for this list. And then now let's talk about the Need equalizers. Now, these ones I absolutely use on each and every mix. Classic vintage Neve designs. This one is the 1073. We also have the 1081. The 1084, and the newer Rupert Neve designs, Portico 5033, and then we also have the 31102. Basically, this one and the 84 are the same equalizer, but they're slightly different. I'm assuming that the samplings are different. I believe Noise Ash told me that was the case, but I'll get rid of this one for now. And see, the 533 also has a Q on the mid bands. And that Q is so important. It really, really is. To be able to narrow down the exact kind of control that you need, no pun intended, for a given piece of audio. Unlike the vintage designs, this one sounds more along the lines of like an SSL 9000 or the Focusrites, maybe less, we'll call it harsh compared to the Focusrite sound. So, you know, this is a more modern, like within the last 20 years design. But because I have other plugins that do that, I'm gonna remove it off the list. Now the 1084 is an interesting one because it is an evolution of the 1073. So the 1073, by the way, the real one only has one mid-band, so it has a two shelves, a mid-band, and that's about it. The 1084 is, in my opinion, the better 1073. It has more frequencies, you know, especially on the high shelf. You have an extra, it's the low-pass filter, because on this one you only have the high pass filter. The 1073 you only have the high pass. And if you look, the frequency plots are different on the high pass. And yeah, just overall more control on the 1084. This day and age, I would never bother with the 1073. It's just, you know, why when you have less control? And then now my favorite Neve design from the earlier years is the 1081. This plugin, although it doesn't have the same sound as a 1073 or a 1084, number one, this is like the real hardware. So it has two mid-band frequencies. It has the high and low shelf, again, selectable frequencies. You have the low pass and high pass, again, selectable frequencies. You also have the ability to narrow the mid-band frequencies. That's a huge deal. Again, you can't control it. It's not a variable control, but at least you have the option of getting a narrower sound. It helps with when you want to just cut a portion of audio and not affect the surrounding tracks as much, or I'm sorry, the surrounding frequencies as much. But again, there are other equalizers, because I'm trying to narrow this down to like just the nitty gritty, and the 81 is definitely one I reach for a lot, but it's not going to make the final list, but it should if I had more room. So maybe I'll keep it up for now. Now the Red Rock Sound Unique Q, this one, it doesn't have a hardware GUI, but look at this thing under the hood. Look at the amount of control you have. Look, this is, so first of all, we have an API 560, an API 550A, API 550B, a Trident A-range equalizer, a Neve 1073, a Trident 80B, a Pultec EQ P1A, a Mag EQ4, and this is a Pultec, I think it's just called the MEQ5, but I might be wrong about that. But it's the mid-range Pultec equalizer, which a lot of companies don't emulate, but they have it on here. So that's cool. And yeah, so overall, this is like a very nice equalizer. You have a lot of saturation options. You have a lot of presets. You know, so if you don't want to like, so this is the best part of the plugin right here, where it says full reset. So you set this up so that you have all the bands on an API 550, like right there. Or if you want to change it, let's change it to the 560, all right? Actually, that's not right, because it should be 10 bands. Okay, I don't know why it's not a 10-band equalizer, but it's not. Regardless, you can choose them if your heart desires. And then we got, let's change it to the regular Pultec. So, you know, you have a lot of options. A lot of options that you otherwise wouldn't have. Oh, that's cool. I like that they start that over there. And, you know, again, just use your ears. Use your ears. If you're used to using a Pultec, you know, it limits you to, actually, I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe that's the real world numbers. Oh, I know why, because the numbers are the same as the low boost. So yeah, see, that's actually what's happening when you cut the frequency of the low band on a Pultec equalizer. So very cool. Unique Q, demo it. It's a very affordable piece of software, and you get a lot out of it, especially if you don't need to have the hardware GUIs, which I like looking at the pretty GUIs. But if you don't need that in your life, then Unique Q is probably one of the best bargains out there. With all that being said, I got to get rid of it. Speaking of Trident EQs, earlier on I was talking about that. So Trident is one of those companies that, unless you've been doing audio engineering for a while, you may not have heard about them, because everybody likes to talk about Neve, API, Pultec. But for some reason, Trident just does not get talked about enough. And Sunglow, unofficially, is a Trident emulation plugin. And for me, it's an alternative to the Neve and the API. Like, actually, for me, it also, sometimes you have more control, and especially with Sunglow, because unlike the hardware, you can choose the in-between frequencies, which is nice. And my favorite usage of the Trident EQ is the snare drum. It is known as like one of the best, if not the best, snare drum equalizers that you can buy. Also sounds good on guitars. And I mean, I like to use API for drums, but You know, if you only have one thing, why not, right? I mean, if you're going to go for something. The other nice thing about Sunglow is it's one of the, actually, I think this is the first channel strip that Acoustic Audio put out that incorporates their new Alive technology. So this more closely emulates what hardware does to a signal. Ultra just allows you to slam it more without it sounding nasty, essentially. And yeah, you have all these different options. You can do the line input, microphone amp, preamp, direct input. So if you're a guitar recorder, it kind of emulates that. And then also, well, you know, if you look at this, it says STCMP, which stands for stereo compressor. Over here is a separate module, because yes, Trident has their equalizer, but I don't think Trident ever released a compressor. But unofficially, a company called Smart Research did many, many years after the Trident. And so this is kind of like a SSL bus compressor, but not really. It's almost like a blend between an 1176 and an SSL. I just hit my elbow onto my desk, if you heard that. But yeah, this is an interesting plugin that I wish I would have had a video out by now. But like I said, snare drum EQ, which is a very important part of nearly every mix that has instruments, this would be my go-to, without a doubt. But it doesn't make my bread and butter list. Okay, so again, the freebie plugins. This is a saturation plugin from Variety of Sound. It's a freebie, and you know, it is what it is. You know, it's an older GUI. You can't expand it. I don't know why. Well, Variety of Sound, I'm not going to criticize a free plugin as much as I would one that you pay for. So check this one out. It's a saturator. It's free, but it doesn't make my list because I have other saturators that I prefer. Now, Tiger, I call it Acoustica Audio's distressor plugin because it just has such a large variety of, it's called compressor curves. Look at that. That is amazing. But the problem is it doesn't saturate. It doesn't have I believe it doesn't have a release curve or release timings or attack timings that are the same. So essentially it is like a kitchen sink compressor. It's one that I personally recommend if you're only going to have one compressor plugin because it can do so much. And yes, it does sound clean, quote unquote, but you know, sometimes that's all you need. And if you need a saturation sound, then you can use other plugins for that purpose, you know, but it's an overall great compressor plugin. It's one that I personally don't use enough, which is why it's not on my bread and butter list. But as I use it more, maybe I'll, you know, start talking about it more. The problem is, just like with most Acoustica Audio plugins, it tends to use a good amount of CPU and latency, and those issues can crop up on older computer systems, which I unfortunately do have. Anyway, next up is another freebie. Yeah, I'm talking about some free plugins on this video, and that is Coffee the Pun. I don't understand why they call it that, but anyway, it's a part of the Coffee suite. It's the free version. So this is a portion of a Pultec equalizer. So you get the low frequency boost and cut and the high frequency boost and cut. And I really should put this under Plugin Doctor. But anyway, it's another Pultec option. Maybe I will keep it in the list. You know what? I think I will. So let me get rid of the 1081. Keep that. And then here's another freebie. So this one is just the low boost and cut. You know, cut is attenuation. That's it. So if you want to do the it's called the kick drum trick, this is the plugin to use, or one of them, I should say. And the preamp for it, the tube preamp, is a little hidden right there, but Yep. This is one of their earlier plugins. So, it uses more CPU and RAM and all that good stuff than the newer ones, but it's still a nice sounding one. I think the Real Pultec sounds a little smoother than this. Like, this is kind of a, what do you call it, more modern tube equalizer sound, where it's a little bit spikier sounding, but sometimes you might need that for your particular kick drum. So I'll keep it in the list because it's another freebie. Okay, Trigger 2. What can I say about Trigger 2 other than it is essential? It is definitely on my bread and butter list. I'm not sure if it deserves to be on the recording phase or not. See, it's hard to make that call, but I guess it could be both. We'll do it on the recording phase, because if you're looking to replace your drums, more than likely you're going to do it at the start of the mix, right? You're not going to do that halfway through, and if you have to replace it, you can. So Trigger 2 honestly was one of the most game-changing plugins for me, because, I hate to say it, but nice sounding drums are not easy to record, because number one, you have to have the nice sounding drums. Not everybody can afford a $3,000 drum kit, let alone a $1,000 drum kit. So I was able to take my little $300 drum kit and at least make the snare and tom drums and kick drum sound a heck of a lot better than they already did recorded. I mean, that's the main thing for me, is that I don't have to spend all this money on a nice DW or Yamaha kit, or whatever else is out there. I haven't. It's been a while. Oh, Tama. I think Tama is the other brand that I like. But Trigger, it's a life-saving plugin, and it absolutely deserves to be on my bread and butter list. Okay, Snapshot. I just wanted to show this one off because it it doesn't deserve to be on the big list, or on the ultimate list, but this is one not many people talk about. What it allows you to do is, if you record with real hardware or mix with real hardware, you can take a picture of that hardware and then put the picture inside of your digital audio workstation. Now, obviously, I would save the pictures in the production folder anyway, but I like having this in there. Just, I don't know, there's something about this that is neat, So it lets you take a snapshot of your hardware. I'm assuming you can still download this from somewhere. If you can't, I believe I have it in the Real Home Recording archive. So if it's not available for download publicly anymore, privately, I'll open that link up. And then finally, we have, actually, I'm going to put this in the mixing section. Snare Buzz is one that people don't really talk about very often. So there's something that happens when you record with a drummer in the room and their snares are on the drum, in the pull-up position, we'll call it. I don't know what the official term for that is, but the snares are on, and those snares will vibrate, especially for a bass guitar, but certainly for a regular electric guitar when you play certain notes. And Snare Buzz emulates that sound. So, I would put it on the recording phase if you want, and then you can just make this its own track. It's a very interesting concept that I don't think there's any other plugin out there like this. And the cool part is it's a freebie, but I'm going to save it for the mix section. So delete both of those, and moving on to the final section of this part of the video. So I don't want to call it my number one plugin, but certainly one that I would not want to do the recording phase without is Access Analog's Analog Matrix plugin. It allows you to use real-world hardware on your tracks. So you're able to rent hardware remotely, expensive hardware, and not have to break the bank. So let me right-click and show you guys some of these pieces of hardware. I mean, like this one alone, I think costs $3,000. The SSL G Comp. The LA2A, that's a $3,000 piece, maybe $4,000. The 33609, I think that one's $5,000. We got two. Let me show you some of the GUIs since nobody's using these. So look at that. That's cool, right? That's cool. And then we got there's the LA2A, famous for sounding great on vocals, bass guitar, somewhat kick drum and snare drum, but mostly those two. It's like the de facto compressor. 33609. This one I don't use as much, but you know, obviously mix bus duties, drum bus duties, drum overheads. You know, that's yep. I guess some people use it on vocals. I don't think I've ever done that, but 1176. This is a classic one. The only thing you can't do that you can do with a real one is press all the ratio buttons in and get an extra like crazy sound out of that. By the way, the Dr. Pepper preset is courtesy of yours truly. I made that suggestion, and I'm still proud of that. All right, let's see. Oh, the Manley Varimu version 4. So this is a ridiculously expensive compressor. And again, this is real hardware. This is not a plug-in. I mean, this is a plug-in, but this is not a software emulation. On the other end of this plug-in, you are controlling these knobs with robotics. Okay? So these are all in Colorado. It's real hardware. It's real hardware that you can use on your recordings. Now, here's one of the freebies that you can try. I think you have to basically buy credits, and then you can use the free ones. But the Dakin comp, very cool. Very cool. You get to use that, I think, for up to a half hour. I might be wrong about that. But yeah, Dakin comp is always free, I think. And then we have the Chandler. This is like a 2254 Neve compressor style. Nice on drums. I haven't used it, honestly. Like, I haven't ever used this plugin. Oh, look at that. Nobody made any presets for it. Access analog. I'm going to have to fix that for you guys. I'm gonna have to sit down with this and make some cool presets. But anyway, I could keep going on. The Distressor, this is a classic, absolutely classic compression plugin. And yeah, it is just, I think it's absolutely amazing. You know, this is the one with the British mod, so you can get the 1176 all buttons in sound. If you hit that switch right there. For some reason it wasn't working. I clicked it a few times, but anyway, yeah. The Distressor, one of my favorites for sure. And then the Highland Dynamics. I haven't used this one very often, so I don't really, you know, have a preference for it or anything like that. But maybe one day I'll try it and see what it can do. I honestly don't know. It's just not a, it's a more modern piece of hardware that I just don't know enough about to try using it. You know what I mean? And waste money using it. That's the main thing. I think that's one of the reasons people may not use it, because they just don't know about it. So this is the other Dakin compressor that they have on their server rack, and it has more options. Maybe it sounds a little better. I don't know, but it definitely has more options than the free one. And yeah. So besides compressors, you guys can see the list. Oh God, the Pi limiter. Look how much that costs to rent per hour. This, I'll just show you guys since it's the most expensive one. Another good one for drums, but they don't have any presets. What's that all about? Anyway. So yeah, they have a mix of modern and vintage hardware. Here's like a newer one. Yep, this is one of their newer pieces. The Tegeler Magnetismus, but it emulates a tape machine, I believe. Yeah, that's what it does. And then we have the newest addition to Access Analog, which, oh my God. Okay, somebody reach out and virtually slap me. Seriously. I had 2 reservations for this. 2 free reservations. This is a 2254 style compressor. Great for drums. Great for other stuff. And I squandered both opportunities. I was going to make a nice video about it too. Doing a review of the real Rupert Neve Designs Shelford diode bridge compressor. And I squandered my opportunity like a dummy. Like I said, please virtually slap me. So that's it for that. And then we go into equalizers. Oh yeah. They have a real API 5500, which is a stereo 550B with added gain options. Okay? Again, this is real hardware, not fake stuff. Okay? And by the way, if you look down below, they tell you which kind of conversion you're doing. So this is a Lynx Auroran. Very nice sounding conversion. This is one of my most used pieces of hardware. Look at all those presets I made for myself. So anyway, before I get charged, I'm removing it. Oh wait, why is the buffer history not working? Oh, because it's disconnected, that's why. So they actually have vintage equalizers up on here. They have the Neve 1064. They have the Neve 1057. That's 2 different kind of Neve designs. And then they have the 1058. I think the main difference is one of these has a microphone amp and the other one doesn't. You can't use the mic amp, obviously, but... And then they had the 2057. I think this is the one that doesn't have the mic amp. But these are all like real equalizers that you can put on your tracks. So, do I use it? Oh, by the way, this is the real version. Earlier I was showing you guys this is the plugin. So this is the real version. This is the real hardware, the real Warm Audio EQP WA. That's what it's called. And so it's one of the most affordable pieces of hardware in the rack. And yeah, good stuff. Again, they have the extra frequencies for the attenuation, which makes it more versatile to use. And let's see what else. Right now, somebody is using the Massive Passive, and they're also using the free Iron Age AudioWorks LH95, and somebody's also using the Pultec, which is the official clone, because the Pulse Technologies company came back and started making as close of clones as they could to the original ones. And anyway, they have 2 of them up on the server for Access Analog, which is really cool. And let's see, we got multifunction. So this, wow. So first of all, the Rupert Neve Designs Master Bus Processor, if you do any mastering, this is one of the nicest sounding pieces of hardware to get. Like it's, if you do modern music, this is more than likely what you're hearing in the mastering studios. They use it because it's just great sounding. Like bottom line, it's just a great sounding unit. And they have 2 of them. They have 2 of these up on the rack. Okay, next up, oh, the SSL Fusion. Somebody's using that right now. They also have the Bus Plus, which has 1,000,000 controls. A better version of the SSL 4000 bus compressor. Yeah, but the problem is, again, it's a lot of controls, you know? It's just a lot of controls. And, you know, would I rather use this, which is a lot easier to use, or this. I mean, this is very intimidating to use, you know what I mean? So it's up to you guys. I mean, this is probably the better hardware, but it's just not as easy to use. So moving on, the Avalon. Now, a lot of people like to use this on vocals. I've heard it's also good on guitar or bass guitar specifically. I like to add more presets personally. I'm going to talk to Access Analog to see if I can do that for them, because 2 presets that's like embarrassing. It's cool that they have that unit on here though. And then we have the, this is one of the newer ones as well, the Master Bus Transformer from Rupert Neve Designs. That is, first of all, that is a lot of presets. So good on whoever made these presets. Maybe the company made these presets. But anyway, it's kind of similar to the Master Bus processor, but not really. It's an easier to use version of that essentially, but it's more like a finishing processor than anything. I wouldn't use it for individual tracks necessarily, but it can be used for that. Why not? You know, especially the saturation. Anyway, let's see. The Tegler Cream. So here's another Pultec equalizer, and I think it's combined with an SSL bus compressor. I think that's the key, and it's also a stereo processor. So, oh, and actually, if you look at that, they don't have any factory presets. I'm going to have to talk to Access Analog about that too. See if they'd be interested. Now, I could also show off these pieces of hardware. Okay, so the satellite. So they actually have an analog summing bus. Out for repair? No! No! Anyway, it's the Rupert Neve Designs 5059, which essentially you send up to 16 stereo tracks of audio through this, and then it sums into stereo transformers and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the idea is that it sounds like a large format mixing console. And I didn't get a chance to use it while I had a chance to use it for free, and that was a mistake on my part. But anyway, the way it works is you actually have to upload your audio first and then use it, because they have that as an option now. Access Analog, just like I said, it's like an amazing service. I still like to use Mix Analog. They are the OGs, the original gangsters. But why is this not working? Hold on. It's not letting me go. I guess if I do this, it'll go back to it. Anyway, Newton channel. So, they have 2 of these now. Maybe they always had 2. Anyway, the Newton channel is we'll call it a modern but vintage styled Neve channel strip. So it has saturation, it has a little bit of an EQ, and then it has it's kind of like a opto compressor, but not really. I wasn't really a big fan of it, to be honest with you. So I probably will not be spending my money on that. Let's see. Oh, so this is as it says, it's a tape simulator. And the good thing is there are some factory presets. And the idea with this plugin is that instead of using a real tape machine, you use this. Handsome Audio Zulu Passive Tape Simulator. Say that 10 times fast. Anyway, that's another option for you guys. And then, apparently they have a guitar pedal board. I think this is like the second newest thing they have. So they had, this came out either after or before the Neve diode bridge compressor. I think it came out like right before that. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So they got all those different presets for your guitar needs. And let's see what else we got. Saturation. Oh, that's right. So my 2 favorite saturation plugins are the Black Box HD2 and the Louder Than Liftoff Silver Bullet. Well, guess what? They have the real hardware on the rack. They have the real hardware. So yes, I like the plugins, but the real hardware sounds slightly better. Slightly, just slightly. The black box is a $4,000 hardware piece. I didn't realize it cost that much. I was looking at it last night. My God, $4,000, and you can use it for pennies on the dollar on your own tracks, mixes, what have you. And I'll show you the Louder Than Liftoff Silver Bullet, which is another favorite of mine. This, it doesn't look like much, but man, it does something to the tracks that I just don't want to mix without it. Like when I first was using this up here on Access Analog, I'm like, man, I can't wait until they release a plugin, because the hardware is out of my reach right now. But it will be, one day I do plan on owning a real one. But for now, there's the real hardware. Again, pennies on the dollar. And let's see. Okay, so the Alltech, I don't think the Alltech's been active for a while, or at least I've never been able to use it. But then we had the Culture Vulture, which is another like awesome tube saturation kind of piece of hardware. Again, real hardware is being used here. And what can I say other than awesome stuff? Awesome stuff. Read the user manuals before you waste your money with renting this stuff. I'm telling you guys, you don't want to be screwing around. Also, maybe try, what I like to do, if there's a plugin equivalent, I'll get my overall settings using the plugin, and then I'll come on here and use the hardware. And, you know, the settings are pretty much the same, but, you know, there's always going to be like some tweaks, but getting started with a plugin helps save a lot of time. And the final thing we have, I already showed it off, is the Tegler Magnetismus 2, which is a tape saturation. Wait a minute, do they not have the Zulu? Why don't they have the Zulu under saturation? They should put the Zulu under there. All right, ooh. Speaking of expensive hardware, yes, they have one reverb unit on the main Access Analog server. They have another one, but it's not on the Access Analog server. They have the Bricasti M7. And if you don't know the heritage of the Bricasti, the people that used to work at Lexicon made the Bricasti. This is going back years and years and years now, okay? The Bricasti essentially is like the most modern Lexicon reverb you can get. And it just, you know, reverbs sound good. I'm sorry, plug-in reverbs sound really good, but if you're looking for a realistic space, the M7 is where it's at. I mean, it just has a sound to it that wraps around a piece of audio and makes it sound expensive, or, you know, whatever you want it to sound like, the Bricasti, but more so expensive than anything. It's not cheap to rent it, but man, is it worth it, in my opinion. Okay, now, this is going to sound weird, but if you are curious about the way a converter sounds, because if you're like me, you're like, all right, I don't want my audio to be degraded. So one of the things I did was I sent 10 loops of audio through using their loopback function. And essentially what you can do is hear if it sounds good or not. That's funny. I put a preset on there. That's pretty funny. You can send a bunch of passes of audio through this to hear what it does to your audio. The main thing I noticed was, you know, there was some noise, but not a lot. And it did start sounding a little bit clearer. It sounded a little bit like there was like a high boost, but it wasn't much. You know, it's better than with my Audient converters that were sounding dull. So and certainly had a lot more noise. So yeah, I have that for the Auroran and the, what's it called, the Galaxy 64 from Antelope Audio. I think that's it, guys. That's pretty much it. The only problem I have with Access Analog is that when you make a chain of hardware, like if you set this one up and then you put oh, the Pultec's available. Let's say you put these two together, it's doing multiple rounds of conversion, you know, and that is a shame. Wow, look at all those different presets I made. So you guys can definitely tell I've been using the Pultec a lot. You know. So anyway, yeah, this chain they do extra rounds of analog to digital and digital to analog conversion. You know, I wish it was pure analog, which is what Mix Analog, which is another service like this, the original ones, on their server, the path is completely analog. So that's like the one downside, is that you're getting multiple rounds, but the conversion's very good. They have some of the best. I mean, the Aurora N is one. It's almost like they call it a straight line converter. Like the signal just doesn't change, and you know it's a great converter. But I would prefer it to be an all analog signal path if I'm going to have like a bunch of them open all at the same time. Otherwise, why would I use more than one at a time? Because if it's going to be converted anyway, I'll just, you know, have those files saved on my hard drive, and you know, if I had to tweak them, I can go back to them. So yeah, this the processing happens at 24-bit 96 kilohertz. You can upload your file ahead of time, and that saves time, which saves money on the credits and saves you time. You can actually upload your audio before you even connect to any of these pieces of hardware. They have really improved this plugin over the years, and I'll actually show you guys the other stuff that they have up. So this is very expensive to use, but if you have the money, then you know essentially you have an entire analog chain at your fingertips. There's the Bax EQ, mainly massive passive. There's the Magnum, another Rupert Neve Designs master bus compressor or bus processor. Then we have this, which is like a custom thing. There's the Rupert Neve Designs master bus converter, and that's about it. Let me get rid of this. But I got to disconnect. Jeez, I almost got charged. That would have been very costly. Anyway, I'm showing off the Magic Garden, which this is another mastering chain of processors. This one takes a little longer to set up for some reason. But again, if you have the money, or if your customer has the money. Oh, speaking of Focusrite, there's the 350. This is the Mark II version. And then we have the Elysia Alpha compressor, very expensive piece of hardware, the Fairman, all these very nice stuff. And I'm going to disconnect before I get charged. And then finally, we have Pama Studios, and they have a large variety of different hardware that you can use individually. So first of all, they have the TubeTech CL1B, which is like a modern LA2A. Very good compressor. It's used a lot with hip hop and pop vocals. I'm going to try to use it myself in the future, but you know, that's definitely one to look for. I was talking earlier about Sunglow having the Smart C2 compressor, and somebody's using it right now. They also have this, which I actually have no knowledge of. This is called the Strom 1660 Pure Tube, I guess. Or maybe it's just called the model 1660. And then we have the DBX 165A. I am familiar with this. Very good usage on drums, bass guitar, kick drum, or I already said it, but snare drum, kick drum. And it's the SSL channel compressor is, I kind of just say that it's the DBX 165A. In a way, it's not really that, but it's just an overall nice sounding VCA. It's got a punch to it if you use the right settings. The Glory comp, as far as I know, has never been put into the server rack. I don't even know what it does. The Giraffe Mix Analog has one of these as well. It's kind of sort of like an LA2A, but not really. I really need to dig into this one more, but luckily they do have factory presets. Oh, that's right. They have the Elysia X Filter EQ, which is kind of like the Muse EQ. Less options, less expensive. Nobody put presets out on this. That's a shame. So I volunteer again to do that. Tube Vitalizer, that's pretty cool, from SPL. Another saturation unit. Okay, they do have presets for it. That's cool. So this is a trick I found out from a recent video that I think I shared it on Real Home Recording. Essentially, you run this Dolby noise reduction hardware on your tracks, and it makes them sound like clearer, punchier. There's no controls. You just use it, and that's pretty much it. It's cool that they have that, but again, a lot of people aren't familiar with it, so they may pass it up. TC Electronic M5000. I made a video about this. There's no presets up here. The presets are all down here. It's essentially a more affordable reverb unit. I'm actually kind of surprised it costs that many credits per hour. But either way, there it is. And they are using a Focusrite RedNet for the converter. So that's kind of interesting. And there again, I made the preset just to be funny. But yeah, you can test out the conversion quality of the Focusrite hardware if you're in the market for it, which is an interesting thing to do, but you know, why not, right? But yeah, that's about it for that. That was a lot longer than I thought it would. Maybe I should just make this a self-contained video, but maybe not. All right, now that we're finished talking about the analog matrix, let's get into the rest of the plugins on this list. Isotope Neutron. So this is like basically the mixing equivalent of Ozone. And I really, really like Ozone. But, you know, may not be the best modules out there, but it's certainly something to use and have in the toolkit if you can afford it. But it is not going to end up in the final ultimate plugin list. It's just not. You know, unlike Ozone, where I think it's one of the most essential mastering tools. It's just because Ozone just has a lot more. Like look at this. I'm not saying this is not a lot of things, but compared to Ozone, it's not a lot. But Neutron's cool. Don't get me wrong. Nectar is the vocal mixing equivalent of Ozone. Actually, I think Nectar, man, this is a tough one because Nectar actually has a lot of cool tools that either don't exist with other plugins or, you know, I don't have it myself with the other plugins. So, this might be a maybe. Oh, this was the one I'm going to have to delete because for some reason, when I click it, number one, the sizing changed from what I had it on. Anyway, T-Rex, aka IK Multimedia, Mic Room, essentially allows you to take a source microphone. It could be a Shure SM57, which is what that is, or SM58, RE20, Electro Voice RE20, Sennheiser 421. What else do they have in here? Well, I don't think a lot of people are going to have the AKG C12 in their mic locker, but let's just say they did. All right. Neumann U87, U67. I mean, yeah. Anyway, the list goes on. I do have the ARC MEMS microphone, and maybe it can be transformed into one of these other microphones. I don't know. But anyway, Cool little plugin to have because it kind of like shapes the sound a little bit, you know. And the other plugin, which I don't have in my list right now, is Acoustica Audio's Lava. And, you know, they're kind of gimmicky, but honestly, they're worth trying. So I had to delete it, otherwise it wouldn't work. I wouldn't be able to show you the next plugin, which is IIEQ Pro. I've always called this plugin the poor man's FabFilter Pro Q. And that's because you have all these different options. And this plugin doesn't cost that much money, especially around Black Friday sales times. But it's an overall very good plugin. It can operate either in series or parallel mode. And I actually use this on my voiceover. I use it in a lot of videos that I make, and it definitely gets used when I just want a clean kind of sound. You know, everybody needs to have a digital kind of equalizer in their back pocket. And this is the one I chose, and the one I paid for. So this is not, you know, something that was sent to me. I did pay for this plugin many years ago, and it stays in my toolbox. More recently, Acoustica Audio released a plugin called Amber 4 Ultra. And Amber 4 unofficially is an Avalon, 2055 hardware equalizer. And it's a Class A device, meaning it's very clean. This is my go-to on vocals. And, you know, I think it works well there. It works well on bass guitar and cello, probably. It would sound good. It would sound good on a lot of different sources. Also on a instrument bus, which I'll get to that when I'm mixing later. But as far as being in the ultimate list, I would have to disqualify it just because maybe it's a bit too clean, if that makes sense, because I already have IIEQ Pro in the list. I'm probably going to get rid of Nectar. No, I'm keeping Nectar for now. Amber's going to have to go, even though I like it. Now, TDR Nova is a freebie. This is the standard edition. And it has, I wouldn't call it multi-band equalization. Dynamic equalization is the term used. I guess you could call it multi-band. But anyway, it allows you to set different EQs. And then if you enable the threshold right here, essentially if a piece of audio goes past the threshold line, then it will go in the negative or positive, depending on which setting you have, with when that audio passes a certain signal threshold level. It's harder to explain than it is to just listen to, but what I love it on is vocals and piano, because vocals and piano have frequency spectrum all over the place. And sometimes if you over EQ a vocal or piano or whatever, it can sound thin or it can sound too thick or whatever the case may be. Dynamic EQs allow perfect equalization is the best way to put it. So TDR Nova is a freebie. There's other ones out there. I bought the one, I can't even remember the name of it now, from Waves. And unfortunately, because of the way that Waves treated their customers, I no longer have any Waves plugins installed, along with the fact that I have Windows 7, so they stopped supporting Windows 7 a long time ago. So I just stopped supporting Waves. At the end of the day, you know, that's just how it goes. So TDR Nova I will keep. I mean, honestly, it's a toss-up between these two, because TDR Nova doesn't even have to be used as a dynamic EQ. It can just be used as a clean EQ. And, yeah, good times. Oh, the Elysia Music Q. Now, I used the hardware version of this a pretty decent amount on mixanalog.com and fell in love with it because it just has a nice sound. You know, just like the Amber EQ, it's got a Class A sound to it, and I don't know, it's just very hard to make this EQ sound bad. This is the plug-in version of it, obviously, And overall, though, it doesn't make the ultimate list, the bread and butter list, because it's somewhat limited in what it can do. Very good on the mix bus, very good on instrument buses, but not making my ultimate recording phase list. So, Fire the Dove. Now, this is an interesting one. So, just like TDR Nova, it can squash a certain range of frequencies and leave all the other ones unaffected. Now, that's putting this plugin in simple terms, but the cool thing about this one is we have different styles of resonance compression. That's really what it's about. This is essentially a competitor to Oik Sound Soothe 2. And Soothe, what it does is it aims to go after frequencies that stick out too much. And it does that in an easier way than TDR Nova does. So with TDR Nova, you have to, there's more settings that you have to set. Fire the Dove and Soothe goes after those. Now, there's other settings you can use, but the default settings, you pretty much just pick a frequency range and it does its magic. And essentially, it just makes a source sound better. For now, Fire the Dove will be on the ultimate list. Moving on is the de-stressor plugin from Slate Digital called FG Stress. I don't want to call this clean compression because there are the distortion modes, but I'll just say that this compressor is a jack of all trades. It is like having, I believe, 7 different compressors in one. There's definitely the opto mode. There's the, I guess, the equivalent of like a DBX kind of compressor. It can do a lot of different things. You can probably just use this one and only compressor on an entire mix and get a good mix. So it is definitely in my bread and butter list. And this is basically the same thing, but from IK Multimedia. I don't think it's as good as FG Stress. FG Stress is basically like having the real hardware in the box. It's very, very close to the real hardware. I can vouch for that because Access Analog has one up on their servers, as I showed before. IK Multimedia Compressor, still a good plugin. I got this when it was free. I was shocked when they released it for free, but hey, IK Multimedia can be very generous like that. So because I already have FG Stress, I'm going to delete this one. If I didn't already have FG Stress, I would keep it on. Speaking of clean compression, we have TDR Kotelnikov. Very, very, very clean compressor. It can do a lot despite it being clean. And it is a freebie. The standard version is a freebie. And although it's labeled as a mastering compressor, you can certainly do a lot more than just that. So, yeah, I'm going to, because again, I already have FG Stress. Well, see, this one's a freebie. Should I keep it on the list just because it's a freebie? I think I will. All right. This is another one that I use during what I call the mix prep phase or the recording phase, the virtual recording console phase, because, I don't have a gigantic room full of rack gear and a large format recording console. If I did, I would use that when I'm recording. I would use these nice sounding microphone preamps, and before the signal hits the analog to digital converter, I would be using all this real world hardware. And if I had the real world hardware, one of the devices I would have is an LA3A, a Teletronics or Uri LA3A. Back in the day and in present day, awesome device. I guess the closest equivalent I can think of that I have access to is the 1176 Revision G that's up on Mix Analog. I love that compressor on bass guitar, on vocals, on regular guitar, regular electric guitar, clean guitar. This can do so many things and do it simply. It's just an excellent overall sounding compressor. I prefer it over an LA2A because I think an LA2A modifies the signal too much. I mean, if you want that, then that's great, but for the most part, I prefer the 1176 Revision G or the plug-in LA3A from Black Rooster. So this is definitely going to be in my bread and butter collection, even though I do have FG Stress. See, it's so tough. Honestly, I might have to get rid of it because of that reason. So I'm going to get rid of that for now. Just to make the list simpler, I'm going to get rid of Kotelnikov. Or should I keep it? Oh, man, I don't know. I think I'll keep the freebies. How about that? I'll keep the freebies just because. So, speaking of which, Thrill Seeker LA, which I wish the GUI was bigger than this, but it's not. Variety of Sound, Thrill Seeker LA. So this is like their LA2A plugin. It's got attack and release controls. So I guess kind of think of it as an 1176 version of an LA2A, if that makes sense. Check it out. It's free. Like I said, check it out. It's free. I mean, why not, right? Now, here is the first equalizer plugin on the list, and that is Acoustica Audio's Salt. Salt combines 3 different large format recording consoles, that being the Neve, the API, which is pink. So Neve is gold, pink is API, and sand is SSL. Yes, you can use an SSL console to record. You know, that isn't typically what people do, but SSLs do have microphone preamps, believe it or not. So, yeah, I've been told that the best combination was it was gold on the low shelf and then API on, I want to say the mid and high frequency. And SSL on the mid frequency, and then gold on the high shelf. And this plugin also has the saturation of the 3 too, under the preamp. So you get the saturation, and yeah. So this is definitely in the bread and butter collection because it fulfills the role. Earlier I was talking about the need equalizers. Well, this one takes over that. You know what I'm saying? I like the need EQs, but boiling down the list to the bare essentials, the desert island picks, then I'm going with Salt. And I'll also show this one off because not only do you have an EQ, which at the top here we have a Mag EQ airband for Sky, and then we have a Neve 1084 for the high shelf, and then we have the mid frequencies, which I believe are either based on a clean digital EQ sound. So let's just say it's a Yamaha digital EQ, or I don't know, Midas. Could be a Midas one. Could be an SSL. I don't know. But if we choose the USA mode, and then we choose the snap option for these 2 mid bands, we now have an API proportional EQ, the 550B actually. And then down here, it gets even more interesting. This is the low shelf section of a Pultec equalizer. So yeah, this is basically the ultimate, in my opinion, drum equalizer. It has all the goods. Even has a high and low pass filter. You know? And on top of that, we have saturation options. We have a channel equalizer. A channel compressor. Not the mix bus compressor, but the channel compressor. We have a de-essing plugin, which, believe it or not, is quite nice. And then we have a delay. And then there's a reverb plugin, convolution reverb plugin. And then over here, oh yeah, it doesn't end yet. We have an opto compressor. So kind of like an LA2A or an LA3A. So all that in one channel strip. And this plugin, the last time I checked, was still on sale for $29. So, should I keep it on the bread and butter list? Oh boy. I think I might have to. Even though Salt does take care of the EQ, it doesn't, it obviously doesn't do as much as Salt does. I mean, this is just this is a lot of stuff all in one plugin for $30, Anyway, moving on. This is the Tape Machine collection from IK Multimedia, and not always used because there might be tracks that don't sound good with tape. But a lot of times I do want to have a tape sound, because I do believe that the golden age of music recording was back when tape was still being regularly used. So that's like, we'll say the mid 70s through the mid 1990s. I think sound quality was very, very good. So I'm not saying tape machines were the reason for that, but I think that the best analog gear was made in those decades and were used in those decades. And, we get that option in the box. And this, I believe, is the MCI JH24. I might be wrong about that, but this is like one of the top of the line tape machines from back in the day. The Tape Machines collection also has a Studer, a Revox, which is an off-brand of Studer, and then an Ampex, I believe, 440, which is like a vintage sound. I don't use that one very often, but this one gets used a lot along with the Studer, and that's about it. So this is definitely staying in the ultimate list. And then next we have our transformer saturation. Now, in prior years, I would use Slate Digital, and maybe I still have this on the list, but Slate Digital VCC, the Virtual Console Collection. And that one featured SSL. The idea is that you use the plugin to mimic what it would sound like if you were sending your audio through a large format mixing console. Well, just the same, this plugin mimics that. And what do you get out of that? Number one, you get harmonics. Harmonics makes your digitally recorded audio sound a bit beefier. And I like to also make it sound a little cleaner or punchier, give it some liveliness. And that's what the Silver Bullet does, among other things. I mean, the Silver Bullet also has an EQ section. If you enable Mojo C, along with these other ones, let me get that up and running. Wait a minute, why did I do that? Okay, so now I have the API and this is labeled A and N, so API and Neve. So the API is like it's got a brighter high end, it's a little punchier sounding. The Neve is like the thickener. So depending on what your track sounds like when you recorded it, you may want to adjust accordingly. The other nice thing about saturation is you get natural compression to go along with it. So really you might want to use this plugin, after the clean EQ. I'm not saying you have to use it as one of the last plugins in the line, but use it somewhere to kind of set the tone of your track. And then the C section, we're not talking about pregnancy here. We're talking about the C drive. It is called the Hitmaker 4000, which is an ode to the SSL 4000. See how it says that right there? It's modeled after, it's based on a classic VCA recording console from the 1980s. I would not want to leave home without the Silver Bullet plugin. And then next we have, unofficially, this is a black box HD2 and maybe something else. But whatever it may be, it's definitely tube saturation. So we have our transformer saturation with this plugin, or op amp saturation, and we could just call it solid state to be general. So solid state saturation, and then on this one we have our tube saturation. And best way to describe this is it adds depth to your tracks or to your mix or whatever you run it through. It just makes your audio come off the speakers better, and my mixes, my masters would just not sound as good without the dynamic saturator from Studio DMI / Acoustica Audio. They also have the mixed version of this, which uses less CPU, less RAM, but less latency. That's the other thing. Less latency. So what I'll do is I'll get rid of this one for now and just have this one up. And then this is what this is essentially emulating, but with Acoustica Audio samplings as opposed to algorithmic emulation. There we go. And look at that. Look who was one of the modelers. A man named Raymond Dratwa. Does that sound familiar? Oh yes, it does. Fuse Audio Labs. This guy knows his stuff. And if you go and look at the reviews of the Blackbox HG2 plugin, so many people love this plugin. And like I said, for good reason. It just has a lot of good options in it, and I would not want to mix without it. So because of that, because this is the official version, I'm going to keep this in the must-have plugins. Also, a lot of people don't like Acoustica Audio for whatever reason. But between those two, I got to narrow it down to this one because this one still sounds good compared to the real hardware. And another one that I have in my collection, but I'm going to not have in the ultimate list, is the True Iron, which is, it's essentially another solid state saturator like the Silver Bullet, but I like the Silver Bullet better. It's easier to use. Well, I mean, this one's not hard to use. It's just, I prefer it. I should say my preference between these two plugins is the Silver Bullet, but True Iron is cool and worth looking into. You might like it better than I do. I'm still using it. It's just not in my ultimate list. So we're boiling it down now. And as I was saying earlier, VCC, this was a long-standing plugin in my collection. It has 2 SSL line inputs, an API line input, Neve line input, Trident line input, and an RCA tube console input. But at this point, I prefer to use the Silver Bullet for my saturation needs. So VCC is, it'll be used, don't get me wrong, it'll be used, but it will not be in the ultimate list. Okay, next up, we have the Smoke EQ. Now, what the heck is this? So, a little company called Retro Instruments decided to make their own version of the Pultec equalizer, which is a very famous equalizer. I talked about it earlier in the video, and their take on it was the original design of the Pultec was flawed because it didn't have high-pass filters. And you can enable those high-pass filters right here. So in the original hardware from Retro Instruments, they have a cutoff at 40 Hertz and a cutoff at 90 Hertz. But Acoustica Audio said, hey, why not expand that and add a bunch more cutoff points for the high-pass filter? So that's what they did. And they also did it on the low-pass side as well. So down here's the EQ itself. We can enable a preamp. You do that by choosing Custom and then EST. What I just did is enabled the control link because I want my settings to be the same on both sides here. And there you go. That is the Smoke EQ. Now, why do I like the Smoke EQ? Awesome on kick drum. Just like I think the Trident EQ is perfect for snare drum, perfect kick drum EQ. is the Pultec. And this is better than the original Pultec because of the high pass filter. This makes the biggest difference. And I also like this on acoustic guitar. It can sound good as like a second vocal equalizer or a vocal group instrument bus equalizer. But for recording purposes, I would have it on the kick drum. And let me think. There's another drum overheads I've used it on before too. And possibly tom drum. I'm going to have to try that. My goal is to use all these different EQs on all the different normal kind of tracks you can use. But overall, the Pultec design is nice. I would like to own the actual hardware of this one day. And Smoke EQ, oh boy, is it going to make the list, or is Red Rock Sound's Pultec EQ going to make the list? Well, I'm going to say this. For an affordable alternative, Red Rock Sound, I believe, is one of the most underrated plugin companies out there. They release good stuff, but they just don't get talked about enough. I'm going to change that, hopefully in the next month or two, by going through all the different plugins and mixing with them. But yeah, they make good stuff. Their GUIs are nice. They go beyond the hardware. You can do, all kinds of different kind of routing, surround sound, and you can do A, B, C, D kind of comparisons in a chain. They have all these different options. They have good presets you can go through. Overall, just a very good company to check out if you want to save some dough on your plugins. But for now, it's not getting into the final list. UniQ. Oh man, I talked about this one earlier. I'm going to leave it for now. And I guess I should move Smoke up to where these two are. And then we got L-Ray 2. So this is not an LA2A clone or anything like that. This is the RCA, I think it was called the 6B. I might be wrong about that. But whatever it is a tube compressor that just makes a source sound bigger, better, 3D. There's all kind of descriptions. It's an easy to use compressor that just sounds good. And, why haven't I used this before? I don't know. But because of that reason, because I cannot speak from 100% experience, it's not going to go on my list for now, but in the future, it'll probably come back. So next up, and finally, for the recording phase list, we have Haze 2 from Clevegrand. If you've ever wanted to make a stereo source out of a mono source and maintain mono compatibility, Haze 2 is the plugin to look for. It can do very, very interesting things to audio. And I mean, just going through this list of presets, you guys can pretty much get an idea of what's going on here. And, as far as taking a track that was recorded in mono and making it bigger in the mix and preparing it for a different kind of track so that it stands out, maybe just use Haze 2 as automation or whatever. But, Haze 2, I don't think it's talked about by a lot of sound engineers here on YouTube. So it's going to be on my list because it does something pretty unique and something that's useful on, I don't want to say every mix, but on a mix that needs it, it'll be useful. So, and why am I missing RX? RX should have been on this list from Isotope. So let me add that right now. And yeah, so this doesn't just do denoising. There's a bunch of other things that RX can do, but denoising is one of the things I can talk about on this. And, if we need to lower the noise floor for whatever reason, we can do that. I prefer to do it outside of the DAW on the audio beforehand. It's just a lot easier to use the standalone plugin or program. But RX, I would not want to Mix without RX, that's for sure. And let's see. So that's pretty much, is this the ultimate list? Let's go through it. Nectar. Am I going to keep this or not? Oh boy. See, it has auto-tune though. You know? And it has an auto leveler. It has... Man, I don't know. What should I do, guys? Should this be on the mixing template? Or the mixing... Man, I'm not sure. I think I might put this on the mixing stage. I'll have to remember that. So, yeah. Okay, IEQ, yes. Keep that. It's affordable. See, RX is like... Well, you can get the Essentials one cheaper. So, that RX isn't like super, super expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. So, but it's so essential that's why it's so darn expensive. IEQ, yes. Nova, yes. And yeah, we'll keep it. Even though I haven't used it a lot, I've always wanted Soothe too, and now I have a competitor plugin to Soothe. Okay, Distressor, yes. Yes. Yeah. Do I need this? Yeah, I'm keeping it because it's free. If it wasn't free, it wouldn't make the list. Salt, I'm definitely keeping. Yeah, I'm keeping this one too. Smoke. Should smoke make the list? Oh boy, this is a tough one, honestly. I'm going to have to take smoke off the list, even though I... Oh, man. I don't want to take smoke off the list, though. I mean, the main problem is I already have other plugins that can, you know, like I have a unique Q, so I'm either going to have to get rid of smoke or unique Q. So between these two, sorry for the air conditioner again. All right, I'm going to get rid of smoke because unique Q just has more, it has more stuff. Tape machine, yeah. Oh, I should put tape machine after these two. Or should I? I guess tape machine and then the saturators, because this is emulating going into a line input, right? Of a mixing console. So yeah. Well, the tube one might not. I think I'm going to move the tube one up. There we go. So that's about it for the recording phase. I'm going to come back when the AC turns off. It's been a few hours since I ended the last recording, so I want to look over these plugins one more time to make sure I got just the ones that I absolutely use. See, Mic Room, I don't use Mic Room. I don't own Mic Room. There's no reason for Mic Room to be on this list. Okay, Trigger, absolutely. RX, yes. I'm just going to read through these to save my breath. And also, I changed the order of the plugins when I wasn't recording. See, I don't use this one either. I mean, you know what? I'll just use this video as the suggestion, and then I don't use this one either. So, like, I can't... I gotta be honest, you know, like these are the plugins I'm using. So okay, I think that's it. I think I'm good with all these. And in fact, now that I got rid of those, I can just drag and drop these to that. Right. Okay. And I guess what I could do is... Yeah. Because the way the order is... So obviously Access Analog is a different thing altogether. But we have essentially what we're trying to change the microphone to. as if this is how things were recorded. So a clean EQ is equal to a microphone that maybe had a better pickup pattern or that was placed better, you know? And the way you do that, I like to do just cuts with clean EQs. Less noise from whatever equipment was recorded. Trigger 2 obviously would be if I had expensive drums in an expensive room, I would use that. And then Nova is essentially the same thing as IIEQ Pro, except it has dynamic EQ features. And then this is kind of the same thing as Nova, but not really. It's a resonance suppressor mainly. And in fact, let me just... I'm going to change that. There we go. Black box. So we got the clean EQs and then the saturation after that. But should I do saturation first? No, saturation afterwards makes more sense. And really, yeah, tube saturation and then clean compression. Then we get to the character EQs. Should I do, see, prestige racks I want to do because number one, it's affordable. Number two, it's just like a catch-all plugin. It really has a lot of good features in it. So I'll keep that for now. And the Pultecs. Oh, this is, by the way, this one is not a Pultec. It's not based on a Pultec. It's a Chandler Tone Control, I believe is the name of this. And it's part Pultec, but part regular old British EQ, whatever that means. Maybe a Neve. I'm assuming it's a Neve. But either way. Okay, then we got tape saturation. Then we got analog console saturation. And then we have our stereoizer. I think that's it. I think that covers all the bases. I mean, only thing is, see, I don't normally use either of these two plugins, and I've already covered them with the Prestige Racks. So I will keep this one up since, actually, the reason I'm doing that is because these are freebies. That's right. But see, that's not the bread and butter, though. Well, if I'm going to cut one, I'm going to cut this one. Because this, you know, the low end is duplicated. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of bass tard. I know it's pronounced another way, but YouTube's weird about using certain words. So, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to keep this up because it's a freebie. And I think that's it. Anyway, let's see what else is going on here. I don't think I can make any other changes because this is pretty much what I'm using these days for mixing music. And it's like the bare minimum. Again, I'm keeping this one in, well, two reasons. It's a freebie. It's a dynamic EQ. And so is this one. But it's not a freebie, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm only giving preferential treatment to the paid plugins. There's another one. Let's see if I still have it in here. There it is. I do. Yes, see? This is why you got to keep going. So this plugin, I'll put it there. Okay. Again, I'm not trying to like say, oh yeah, you had to buy all these plugins. No, that's not the case at all. And in fact, what I want to say to people is, you know, Access Analog, although it's affordable rentals, it still may be outside your budget and it may not make sense for you to use hardware in your mixes and masters. So, but it is an option that I want people to know about. That's the whole point of these kind of videos, is to know what you're getting into and what's available out there, what tools are available out there, because that is really half the battle, choosing the right tools. So I think that's a good lineup. And maybe what I'll do is, there we go. Just so I have something there. Okay, that's it.